Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really tackling a big one for VPs listening in sustainability, transportation, planning, folks.
Yes, Scope 3 emissions.
Yeah.
Specifically the ones embedded in your transportation network.
Exactly. The emissions your carriers generate. And you're all facing this tightrope walk, right?
Absolutely. You need to cut those emissions, cut them aggressively, but you also have to keep a tight grip on costs.
And those often feel like they're pushing in opposite directions, don't they?
They really do. And that's kind of the puzzle we want to dig into today.
Okay.
Our mission really is to explore how companies can actually reduce Scope 3 from transport and find real cost savings at the same time.
Looking for those hidden opportunities you mentioned?
Exactly. Those things may be lurking just below the surface in existing operations.
Yeah, and it's not just a nice to have anymore. It's becoming critical, isn't it?
Definitely. We saw that EY survey, something like 8 out of 10 supply chain execs are actively looking into sustainable transport to cut Scope 3.
That's huge. And when you think transportation is what, nearly a quarter of global greenhouse gases?
Around 24%, yeah. So tackling this piece is significant.
So even though companies don't, own the trucks or run the 3PL warehouses usually.
Right. You don't have direct operational control in that sense.
But you're saying there are still levers we can pull, things we control that impact both carbon and cost.
Yes, absolutely. There are two really fundamental areas where shippers, you, have significant leverage.
Okay, I'm listening. What are these two big levers?
So the first one is all about truck utilization, making sure those trucks are full.
Seems obvious, but maybe it's not happening.
Well, the data shows it's a major issue. Most companies typically run trucks only about 85 to 90% full.
Wow, okay, that's a lot of empty space rolling down the highway.
It really is. And think about what that means. You're paying to ship air, essentially.
Which drives up costs and, I assume, emissions because you need more trucks.
Precisely. More trips, more fuel burned, more driver hours, more wear and tear. It all adds up. It directly inflates Scope 3 emissions.
And costs, obviously. Plus wasted labor, space.
Exactly. It's inefficient across the board. But the flip side is the opportunity.
Right. So improving utilization saves money and carbon.
Yes. The potential is significant. Sources suggest maybe 5 to 10% freight cost savings just from smarter load building.
Just filling the trucks better?
Essentially, yes. Using technology to optimize how things are loaded.
We've seen examples of this, right? Companies using AI.
Absolutely, like ProvisionAI's Auto O2 technology. It uses AI to figure out the best way to load, aiming for like 98% or more capacity.
98%? That's a big jump from 85-90.
It is, and they took something like 88,000 truck journeys off the road for their clients in 2023.
88,000 fewer trucks. What did that save?
Around $200 million based on their estimates. It's substantial.
Wow. And that's not just aggregate figures, right? It works plant by plant.
Yeah, we saw one example where a single plant saved over $1 million a year just by optimizing load building.
Incredible, just from loading better.
And another company saw a 5.6% cost cut with an ROI in just, 3 months?
That's fast. And you mentioned a stat about how many trucks are underloaded overall.
Yes, something like 91% of trucks out there are estimated to be underloaded to some degree.
91%. That really frames it as a massive hidden opportunity. Okay, so lever one, fill the trucks properly. What's number two?
The second key lever is about providing more consistent volume to your core carriers.
Consistent volume? You mean avoiding big swings in how much we ship?
Exactly. What we often see are these incredibly volatile deployment shipment patterns. Huge spikes one day, then almost nothing the next.
The boom and bust cycle. Why does that happen so much?
Often it's a disconnect, maybe between sales forecasts, planning systems, and actual logistics execution. These systems often generate massive volatility.
How massive?
Well, sources suggest many supply planning systems create 600% or even more volatility in daily shipments compared to the average.
600%. That sounds chaotic for carriers.
It is. It creates huge inefficiencies for them.
Yeah.
Your core carriers, they struggle to handle those peaks efficiently.
So they need extra trucks for the peaks.
Right. They might have to bring in extra equipment, often repositioning it empty that's deadheading, costly, and generates emissions.
And then during the lull.
That equipment sits idle. Unproductive, wasted capacity.
So this volatility directly hits our freight costs.
Oh, definitely. That inconsistency can easily add, say, 3 to 5% to your freight expenses.
Why? Just because it's harder for carriers to plan?
Partly, yes. They can't optimize their networks or pricing for you if your demand is all over the place, and it pushes you to less ideal modes sometimes.
How so?
Well, you might prefer to use intermodal, right? It generally has lower Scope 3 emissions for longer hauls.
Yeah, makes sense.
But if your volumes are spiking unpredictably, it's really hard for intermodal providers to guarantee capacity. So you end up defaulting back to trucks, which might be faster, but less carbon efficient.
Got it. So the volatility basically forces suboptimal choices. Are there ways to smooth this out?
Yes, there are technologies emerging like LevelLoad. It uses a digital twin of the network for capacity planning.
A digital twin, like a simulation.
Sort of, yeah. To model and forecast better, aiming to reduce that supply planning volatility significantly, maybe by 60% or so.
And that leads to more consistent flow.
Exactly. Less reliance on spot carriers, less need for last minute, maybe less sustainable truck movements, more predictability for everyone.
Okay, so those two levers, truck utilization and smoothing out volume, seem really powerful, foundational almost.
They really are. They address some major, often overlooked inefficiencies, true hidden opportunities.
Are there other, maybe broader strategies VP should keep in mind that align cost and carbon goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Those two are crucial, but they connect to other good practices.
Like,
well, setting clear targets is key. Targets for cost, for carbon reduction, and for customer service. And track them together.
maybe indexed against sales or something?
Yeah, ideally. So you see the relative impact. Then there's mode substitution, actively looking for chances to shift.
Air to truck, truck to intermodal.
Exactly, where it makes sense economically and for service. And remember, intermodal generally means lower Scope 3 per mile.
Right. What about just how we handle the orders and shipments themselves?
Shipment consolidation is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Combining smaller orders into fuller loads.
Instead of lots of LTL shipment.
Precisely. Or even parcel. Implementing things like sailing schedules where you group orders for a region and ship less often but fuller can drastically cut down on those smaller, less efficient shipments.
Planned consolidation.
And sometimes it's about avoiding shipments altogether. Remember that food plant example?
Where they used return trips intelligently.
Yeah, and smart tech. They cut way down on outbound trips, saving millions and obviously reducing emissions. Just finding smarter ways.
That links back to utilization, really.
It does. Optimizing customer orders helps too, maybe incentivizing larger orders or using tech to guide orders towards full truckloads.
Small things add up, too, like pallet pooling.
Sure, it simplifies packaging, reduces waste, and real-time routing.
Like using traffic data.
Yeah, like waste management does. Saves time, saves fuel, saves carbon, saves cost. It's all connected.
You mentioned deadhead miles earlier when talking about volatility. Can we just underline that impact again? That graph you mentioned sounded telling.
It really highlights it. When volumes swing wildly day to day on a lane, carriers have to move empty trucks around just to be in the right place for the next potential surge.
Those are the deadhead miles. Pure waste.
Pure waste, unproductive cost, unnecessary fuel burn, unnecessary emissions. And guess who ultimately pays for that inefficiency?
The shipper.
Yeah.
Us. It gets built into the rates.
Exactly. So by smoothing out your own shipping patterns, you're not just helping your carrier be more efficient.
You're directly helping reduce their costs and emissions, which should eventually benefit your costs, too.
Precisely. It makes the whole system more efficient and less carbon intensive.
It really sounds like technology is a critical piece of this puzzle. You mentioned LevelLoad and Auto02?
They are definitely key enablers. Tools like LevelLoad, that network capacity digital twin, give you the foresight to smooth demand.
And Auto02 tackles the physical loading.
Right, that AI-powered load optimization gets the most into the truck. They give you better planning, better execution, better visibility.
That's where the real gains are unlocked, it seems.
And it's specialized tech. ProvisionAI even has a patent in this optimization space. It shows the level of innovation needed.
So the core message feels like you don't necessarily need to jump straight to, I don't know, electric trucks tomorrow, although that's important long term.
Right. The really significant savings and emission cuts often are waiting to be found by tackling these fundamentals.
These hidden opportunities we keep mentioning.
Exactly. The underfilled trucks, the chaos caused by volatility. Fix those first.
Because that's where a lot of the waste, both cost and carbon, is currently hiding.
That's it precisely. These aren't always the flashy initiatives, but the impact on the bottom line and the environmental footprint can be huge.
And we saw a real example with Riviana Foods, right?
Yes, that's a great case study. They focused on these kinds of optimizations.
And the results.
Over $1 million in transport savings, measurable carbon reductions, and just better, smoother loading processes overall.
Tangible results. There's even a video about it, you said.
Yeah, there's a YouTube link folks can check out for the details of their journey.
So wrapping this up, it really sounds like reducing scope 3 in transport isn't necessarily this separate, painful cost center.
Not at all, or at
Yeah.
least it doesn't have to be. It could be directly tied to becoming more efficient, more optimized, and actually more cost-effective.
By focusing on those fundamentals.
Yes, maximize truck utilization, get those trucks full, and smooth out those disruptive, expensive volume swings.
If you do that, you unlock those hidden opportunities.
Yeah.
You really do. You get significant cost savings and meaningful environmental benefits hand in hand. It's a genuine win-win that's often sitting right there.
That's a powerful thought to end on. So for everyone listening, maybe the big question to ponder is, what's the untapped potential in your network? How much cost and how much carbon could you realistically squeeze out just by tackling utilization and volatility, before diving into maybe more complex, capital-intensive solutions?
Where is that low-hanging fruit in your specific operation?
Exactly. It seems really worthwhile to maybe take a hard look at your own shipment data, quantify the potential.
See what those payload improvements could be, the CO2 cuts, the dollar savings.
Just from better loading and less volatile shipping, it sounds like there could be a lot waiting to be found.